Welcome back. We in the media have been lectured quite a bit lately, especially by the White House and more noticeably by the press secretary, Sean Spicer, for a lot of things. Well, today it was for calling what we've been talking about tonight a ban. Well, that's a perfect symbol in many ways of this whole thing, including the botched and confusing rollout. Here is Mr. Spicer just a few hours ago.
You're saying it's not a ban. This was President Trump's tweet yesterday. If the ban were announced with a one-week notice, the bad would rush into our country during that week. So he says it's a ban.
I mean, he's using the words that the media is using. But at the end of the day, it can't... Hold on. It can't be... Jonathan, thanks. I'll let Kristen talk. It can't be a ban if you're letting 1 million people in.
Now, I know one of his bosses in the White House says to the media, we need to shut our mouths and just listen. But when we listen to people like Sean Spicer, they tell us one thing, and then they tell us later on when they do it, it's our fault. Exhibit A, this was this Sunday, again, that's just 2 days ago, on This Week, which is a Sunday morning program on ABC. Take a listen to what he calls the rolled out botched program.
As Terry pointed out, it's a 90-day ban to ensure that we have further vetting restrictions so that we know who's coming to this country.
Okay, you heard that B word, ban. Okay, he said that, and again, I don't think the media made him say it. And here was Spicer again at George Washington University Sunday night. Listen again carefully to what he's calling it.
A lot of this, to be honest, was blown out of proportion. I mean, I think when people understand the statistics and what's happening, so let me just walk through the TikTok. One, the ban deals with 7 countries that the Obama administration had previously identified as needing further travel restrictions.
Okay, so you just might say, well, this is a confused guy, a lot's getting thrown at him. He might yell at the media for calling it a ban when he does it twice himself. But how about his boss? Okay, at the end, that's who we should listen to, the commander-in-chief, the president, the chief executive. Well, let's listen to what the boss has to say this Saturday in the Oval Office.
We're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years.
All right, so just to put it succinctly, he's yelling at the media because it's the media's fault for calling it a ban. When his boss calls it that, his boss, by the way, went to Rudy Giuliani and said, how do I ban Muslims from coming into the country? Rudy told everyone this weekend that was what he put together and gave him. They're denying that that was ever the intent, and they're denying it was ever called a ban. But as you see, that's exactly what they call it. Now, it's not just the semantics of the language of it, but also many people are saying how this immigration order, ban, whatever you want to call it, was put together. And that, in many ways, is even more worrisome than what is actually in it. The botched rollout was coordinated by White House Policy Director Stephen Miller and Senior Strategist Stephen Bannon. We'll be talking about him quite a bit tonight. Multiple reports are saying that the whole plan was intentionally kept quiet from Republican leaderships, not only in Capitol Hill, but within the newly formed administration. Several House Judiciary Committee aides were also reportedly involved, and they were told to keep their own bosses in the dark and were also required to sign non-disclosure agreements. Mike McCaul. Representative McCaul is the chair of the House Homeland Security Committee. He was not kept in the loop. By the way, McCaul was also a national security advisor for the Trump campaign. Tell me at any point if any of this makes sense to you. Defense Secretary James Mattis, remember the beloved Mad Dog that the now president talked incessantly about on the trail? Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly reportedly also left out. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, again our friend today, denying the top brass were left out of any of it. But however, nobody is denying that Bannon was on the inside here, and I want to remind everyone who Mr. Bannon is. He, the alt-right architect, self-described Leninist of the Trump campaign. He once reportedly said, quote, I'm a Leninist, easy for me to say. Lenin wanted to destroy the state, and that's my goal too. I want to bring everything crashing down and destroy all of today's establishment. David Brooks of the New York Times, nobody's idea of a liberal here, describes the whole mess the following way, quote, to say that it is amateur hour at the White House is to slander amateurs. The recent executive orders were drafted and signed without any normal agency review or even semi-coherent legal advice. filled with elemental errors that any nursery school student would have caught. Now, if you think this immigration move is just a trial balloon or the end of the crackdown, look carefully what the LA Times is reporting. Here's how it describes what White House advisors Steve Bannon as well as Steve Millian want to do. Quote, they see themselves as launching a radical experiment to fundamentally transform how the U.S. decides who is allowed into our country, and moreover, to block a generation of people who, in their view, won't assimilate into American society. All right, a lot to chew over here, and to help us do that is our friend Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County exec and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Okay. What bothers or concerns you more, and obviously you worked at a different level of this, but when you create a policy, normally there's channels you get through, not only for input, but also for buy-in, because you're going to get questions. And then usually there's a coherent plan for a rollout where you notify the people impacted by it what they're going to do. And you obviously calculate what the reaction's going to be so that, you know, you get the media on your side on your own terms. You usually don't go radio silent when you launch it. Can you explain in 101 politics, forget about the ethics of this, how none of those rules were followed here?
I really can't. I mean, there's so much to chew on here. I really can't. Any good politician wants to be successful. Generally, that's what they. And in order to be successful in any particular policy, you need legal input and you need financial input primarily, because you need to know it's legal. And then you normally would get the people who are most involved with it to give you any criticism that there might be that somehow you didn't follow around and make sure that all corners were covered. That's standard. You don't have to make it a press event. You do your homework to make sure that you roll it out properly. In government, like major businesses, it's complicated. And it's complicated enough so that you're going to have mistakes and problems even in the best laid out plans. So I think the New York Times reporter in your quotes is accurate here. What it really tells me is there's a lot of work that has to be done with this administration. To say nothing of the fact that their press spokesman doesn't know what he's talking about. Or is the alternative facts what we're supposed to believe? I mean, is this all rhetorical, or are we trying to get to some kind of bottom line? So in answer to your question, a good politician, one who wants to succeed in government, needs, before they lay something out, to do at least some homework to assure that it's going to not fall off the cliff when they do lay it out.
But I think Scott may have touched on what I think is the key here, the criticism. It's one thing to want secrecy so that you roll it out on your own terms, but other administrations would soften the ground before leaving an announcement like this, and they would do their homework and double check. Trump, as we know from his business career, from his personal life, and from his campaign, despises being criticized, hates it, can't even handle it. You saw he's still insulting Chuck Schumer 2 days after Schumer pushed back on one of his policies. And to get criticism from his own administration or from people saying this isn't legal or this will cause difficulties or this is antithetical to the way we work as a nation, I think he would take that so badly. So I don't think this is for secrecy. I think this is because he doesn't want criticism.
I'm not trying to make you Sigmund Freud, though, but he's getting criticism not just from the typical corners. You had Paul Ryan today, Andrew, saying that it wasn't planned properly. You have people at agencies. You have people, that aren't going on record, but we're hearing there could be mass resignations at major agencies.
It's all after the fact, and so
how's that different?
Because he can lay out his plan. Here's what I want to do, and then anybody who criticizes him is just a hater or just doesn't quite get it. And that's not dissimilar from what he did in his business career either. I have Trump University. It's a fantastic university. All these lawsuits and all these complaints don't mean anything, because I say it's a fantastic university. He gets there first, and then he gets to brush off anybody who brings legitimate criticism or illegitimate criticism.
But importantly, if you don't talk to your Homeland Security Secretary, okay, and you don't talk to the lawyers on immigration who know at the State Department, who can tell you, about green cards, about the other things, then that's scary. It's either stupid or portends of a tremendously difficult time.
And reportedly, there's been many interesting things that come out of it, and for at least for this segment, I'm even talking to practicalities of this, but you had General Flynn, who's our Homeland Security person, come out and say, yeah, they ran by different briefs, but he wouldn't be specific if and when he saw the briefs and what he would do. But as I've learned, you can do that once or twice, especially with somebody who doesn't need the job, okay? Where they'll go out and they'll take a bullet for the administration because they're on the team. But at a certain point when it impacts your reputation, your legacy, you're not going to do that. I noticed General Mattis has been radio silent here because look about some of the people that have all of a sudden been told they're not allowed to come in. We'll get into them specifically. But it's the interpreters that work for him in Iraq and in the hotspots who fought with this country, who sacrificed and put their lives on the line that they're not allowed in. Paul Ryan criticizing him says something to me. Later on this week, look at the schedule this week. They pushed up 2 days to tonight, the Supreme Court announcement, because they want to change the subject. Open secret in Washington today. It was supposed to be Thursday. Later in the week, there's a scheduled event in Milwaukee at the Harley-Davidson factory, and that's been canceled now because the folks at Harley-Davidson don't want to come because they're afraid of all the protests and everything that'll be attached. Everyone can look at their own polls, they can look at whatever they want, Dominic, but it's real early to be underwater with approval ratings, and real early that people are starting to treat toxic here, you coming around. There's usually a honeymoon, right? Forget about after 10 days, for at least a few months. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
Well, there will be no honeymoon for this president, number one. Number two, let me help you guys out a little bit here. He doesn't care. He told you during the campaign. Remember, I know better than the generals. He wasn't joking. To understand the personality.
Okay, but wait a second. You understand the personality better than the three of us combined.
And that's why I'm telling you he doesn't care.
Second. I've never met a person, Dominic, who cares more what people think of him.
Right, but he doesn't care in terms of the traditional sense of the way things are done. As a matter of fact, I would even say, Richard, that he enjoys rocking the boat and having the media scurrying around and criticizing him.
If he doesn't care then why now twice, reportedly from people with inside, did he send Spicer out because he was so upset by how this has been covered and the rollout of it, and how livid it reportedly is at fellow Republicans on Capitol Hill because none of them have come out and supported him. It has been widely reported that he's losing his mind here because he's got no cover, no one's protecting him, and he's getting yelled at.
I'm glad you used that term, losing his mind. I just, just point that out. But I do want to say, Richard, but I think it's despicable because the way I see it, Republicans are covering him via their silence. Notice Democrats, you carried the news conference live last night. Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, Democrats tried to postpone the vote on some of the nominees, right? But the fact of the matter is, did that happen? Democrats wanted the vote postponed. Did it happen? No, because Democrats don't have the votes.
Well, they postponed it for 1 day, but they're postponing the inevitable.
But Republicans are complicit in terms of the nuttiness that's going on in Washington. Behind the scenes, they complain, but publicly, they're in line with this guy.
Well, remember, he's got a 48 to 50% approval rating by the same people who, in my opinion, don't really fully follow all of this as detailed. He is still supported by the people who elected him, and that 48.
Something?
Yeah, I mean, so you talk about the Republicans. He's got support.
Before we go to break, new Reuters poll is out on the executive order itself. 48% agree, 41% disagree, including 23% of Democrats who agree with it and 44% of independents who agree with it. So far, the numbers are working in his favor.
We shall see, and as we'll talk about, this is not going to be the last executive order we're hearing like this. If you think that this was draconian, whatever, it could be an hors d'oeuvre of where he may be going. But when we come back, President Trump, he fired the acting attorney general last night because she would not play ball in his immigration order. But what everyone's focusing on today isn't so much that he removed her from her job, but it's the way he fired her that many people are saying, what exactly is going on here?